All right, so let's get started. Welcome. My name is Jennifer West. I'm the program director of the MFA Art program, and we're really honored to have artist Andrea Bowers with us here tonight. She's going to be introduced by 3 students from our program. I'd also like to highlight next week's talk is with Vishal Julio on October 18th. And then on November 1st, we're having Danielle Dean. And on November 4th, we're going to have the curatorial in the MA in Curatorial Studies exhibition. Their thesis show is going to be opening, so please come through. All the info's on our website. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome the student introducers.
Should I get out of the way?
Well, they'll come right up here. You can
Good evening, everyone. We are here to introduce Andrea Bowers. Andrea lives and works in Los Angeles. She got her MFA from Cal Arts. She since cultivated a reputation creating works that bring social justice to the forefront. Her multimedia practice includes video, sculpture, drawing, and installation work. Her works have been shown internationally and encompass issues ranging from climate change to human rights.
Just a few of Andrea's past exhibitions include Women Workers of the World Unite at the Contemporary Art Center in Cincinnati, Sanctuary at the Bronx Museum in New York, hashtag Sweet Jane at Pomona and Pitzer College, Museum of Art in Claremont, California, and The Weight of Relevance at the Power Plant in Toronto.
In 2021, a major midlife career survey of Bowers' work curated by Michael Darley and Connie Butler opened at the MCA Chicago and traveled to the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles in 2022. Bowers' current solo exhibition at Galleria del Modern di Milano has part of the exhibition program organized by Fondazione Forla. Bowers is represented by Vidmir Los Angeles, Andrew Krebs Gallery, Kaufman Repetto, and Jessica Silverman Gallery. Please give a warm welcome to Andrea Bowers.
I thought maybe I should turn my phone off. Okay, let's see. I don't know, this is so crazy. Okay, you can all hear me, right? One way or another? Okay, it's good. I can manage. Okay. Let's see. I've been here for a really long time, 1990. I came here from New York, where I worked in galleries, and prior to that, I went to school in Ohio at Bowling Green State University, where I was born in a really small town. Because I went to Bowling Green State University, I made a lot of craft. We didn't talk about content at all. We didn't read any theory. We just kind of made stuff. But I really loved to make stuff, and I was really resentful of that education for a really long time. But it is my passion. So as much as I've worked with Suzanne Lacey, my passion is not community organizing, although it's part of my practice. My practice is really, if there was only one thing I could do, I would draw. I just love it. So I had to find a way to mix those things that I'm passionate about, and so that's kind of what my practice is. I make work about activists because that's my other passion. And I reach out to activists, or they reach out to me to collaborate. And I pretty much use my art skills I don't know how many of you have ever been a part of an activist group, but a movement often has an arts division in it. And I pretty much function like that. I remember for a while, maybe it was I can't remember what it was. There was some action, and a bunch of us artists went to it, and everyone volunteered for every committee who are artists, other committee than the art committee. And I was the only one who was like, can I make signs? Can I, so I really think of my job as to emphasize what they're doing. I've also been on the front line. I've done a lot of different parts of activism, fundraising, publicity, all sorts of things. So I sort of think of how my role can work with an activist. And most of the activists I've worked with, I have a pretty long relationship with. So I'll get into some of that. So this is a neon sign I made. It's pretty big. It just says, "My body, my choice." Her body, her choice. Recently, I mean, maybe, I can't even remember what happened, but a couple years ago, during COVID, I was at a protest, and there were thousands of people on City Hall steps, and people were saying, "Her body, her choice," and then it was a response, "My body, my choice." So I get a lot of my ideas from cheers and chants. So this is like one of the earliest pieces I made. It's called Letters to the Army of Three. And gosh, I can't read that from here, but I guess I'll come around. So basically there were 3 living members of a group called the Army of Three. Basically, my editor, who I still work with today, I've used 2 video editors my whole life. I always start with video. I always start with interviewing activists, and then usually everything comes from there. I don't care if anything comes from it. I may not make a work from it. I may not make a body of work. I don't put any sort of pressure on myself like that. I worked with Suzanne, by the way, for 8 years, the public practice program at Otis. I think it was about 8 years. And she had me teach a class on case study research. And I taught it really badly and wrong in a certain way compared to what she wanted. But I realized that case study research was a kind of methodology that I was using without recognizing that there was a methodology that exists for that. So like what I tend to do is, it's like you're always aware of your own, you pick a case, which is a person or a group of people, and then you do a series of investigations, like you observe, you collect, if published and non-published material, you collect ephemera, you do interviews. There's many different interview processes, and all the time you're well aware of your preferences and privileges. And preferences means I really hope I can make this, or this piece turns out this way, or these people are going to say these things, or I want them to behave that way. And privileging is like, what information are you privileging? Like, I'm privileging this and ignoring what this guy over here is saying. And so I have to be aware of my preferences and privileges. And I don't go out with like an assumption of like, I'm going to make this or I'm going to make that. I just start the practice and see what happens. I just start the research and see what happens. I don't go into a studio and start decorating. I can't make stuff up in my head. It comes from my research. So, I have been at a party with my friend Lindsay, who is a very political filmmaker. And she introduced me to a woman named Lori O'Connor. And I had just finished a piece I'll show you in a minute about a tree sitter, a forest defender. And that was my first direct political piece. And this woman, Lori, said, well, there are these activists who were really influential prior to the passage of Roe versus Wade. And they're kind of so radical that the kind of like, the organizations that exist now, like, NARAL, Planned Parenthood, they've written them all out of history. So she was trying to write a book about them, and she said, I need somebody to videotape them. And I was like, they were up in the Oakland area, and I was like, I'll go up and interview them. And only 2 of them were alive, Lana and Pat. And they were trying to women at the time, it was so bad when we didn't, 50 years ago when we didn't have a right to an abortion. You all are hearing the irony of this, right? Because now abortion is outlawed in this country again. But they were trying, Pat was honestly trying to get pregnant and have an abortion and get arrested at a certain point. They were teaching how to self-induce an abortion with your fingers so it was safe, because women were dying. Women were killing themselves. And the other thing that they did, so they were constantly being arrested. They were trying to do really radical things to try to get a court case so that it could go to the Supreme Court, and to also bring attention to the violence that women were suffering through. And I realized I didn't know anything about this whole history or about Roe versus Wade, because I had grown up with the privilege of having the right to have an abortion. And so through Pat, I was learning this history. So I went up and interviewed Pat and Lana, and it was really amazing. I still have not made a video out of it because it's so crazy and I can't find a linear narrative. I was actually driving over here tonight. I've tried to edit it like 20 times, and maybe I figured something out tonight on my way over. But when I was at Pat's house, because Pat was an activist, she saved animals, she was working with sex workers, she was against war, she was like fighting every cause, and every penny she had went back into her activism. But she brought me over to her house, and I noticed that there were these towers of like plastic bags filled with paper, and they were like stacked to the ceiling. And I was like, Pat, what's in those? And she was like, well, that's part of the Army of Three's work. And what they had done is they had created a list of doctors who would give safe abortions outside of the United States. And they were going and visiting doctors because I'm just gonna say some horrible stuff. Because we're in this moment now. One of the things that was happening was women would go, because it was illegal to get abortion, they would go to someone that was recommended to them that was supposed to be a doctor, and then they would be raped instead of getting an abortion. There were violent things happening to women. So Pat was going down to Mexico because Mexico was giving, you could get an abortion in Mexico. And she was checking with all the doctors, meeting the doctors, and creating a list. So they would publish in Playboy, in local newspapers, on the radio, that they had this list. And could people, I think they asked for a couple of dollars because they had no money, they were going broke, or $1 or something, or a self-addressed stamped envelope, and they would send the list. So when Pat started opening these bags, I was finding there were thousands and thousands of letters from people, men, women, mothers, fathers, friends, sisters, brothers, everyone trying to find a place to get a safe abortion for someone and to get this list. And you have to remember, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. These folks were pregnant, and they were trying to find a doctor through the mail and through a list. So I said to Pat, they're very emotional, they're very awful in a lot of ways, but the stories are so sincere. And it dawned on me that that's what moves people. Because I was afraid back at the time that I made this, that George Bush was going to take our rights to an abortion away, And I thought, these letters are the moving thing, and this is what I should make work about. And I said, Pat, can I have some copies of this? And this is when we used to go to like the Xerox store. And I gave her $50 or $75. And I said, if you can Xerox some, send them to me, that would be amazing. And within 2 weeks, she had Xeroxed 250 of them for me. So I made a really simple wall work. I first made a book, and then I thought, Americans don't really read books very well, especially in galleries. So I decided to make it into a wall work, and I thought it would be interesting. Now, I was looking at it today, and I'm like, wow, it seems so old, because it was in 2007 or 2008, but I had people, I divided all the letters into, if I could tell, Pat had crossed all the names out, but I could tell sort of by what they said, maybe age, gender, whatever, and I tried to divide them up into categories, and then I just sent a letter out, an email out that got passed from person to person, asking people to volunteer to read the letters. So I thought I'd show you a little bit of that first video. Let's see if the sound comes up. It's really slow. I don't think it's playing, is it? Yeah, okay.
May 21st, 1968, Los Angeles, California. My daughter is mentally ill and is not able to care for a child. Please send me a list of doctors in Tijuana that take care of abortions. Thank you.
March 6, 1968, Fresno, California. When I called about an abortion, the girl I spoke with said that you only have lists of doctors outside of this country. When I inquired about any in California, she asked if I was willing to take the legal responsibilities. If that is the problem, yes, I would. Prior to speaking with her, however, I understood that the main problem of obtaining the names of any California doctors was a law forbidding sending a list of that sort through the mail. If there is any way of getting a doctor closer than Mexico, the only country of those mentioned to me which is at all feasible, I would be willing to accept the legal responsibilities and come up to San Francisco so you won't need to send anything through the mail. I am 9 weeks along, according to my doctor, and need to take care of this very quickly. Could you also give an estimate of cost? If you prefer, and you can help me contact a physician in California, you can call me person-to-person collect. If you can still only give me the name of a Mexican doctor, please use the enclosed envelope as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
May 21st, 1968, Los Angeles, California. I received your name and address from my Reverend in Santa Monica. I have seen him recently to discuss my problem in detail and have concluded that an abortion is the only answer right now. I am married, but my husband has just been called for jungle training in Korea for a period of active duty for 18 months. I will be self-supporting, so a child would cause too many problems at this time. I want to be sure this is a pretty hygienic group of doctors. I've heard so much about the terrible conditions of Mexico, but I feel that even that I've heard a few bad things, this is the only answer. If you could, I wish you'd rush this to me because my husband is leaving June 4th, and it must be done before then. I would also like to know if any of these doctors would do this on Sunday, because I work all weekend. It would be the only day besides Saturday that I can make the trip down there. Please give me the information, and also how to get in contact with them. I can't tell you how important this is, so please hurry. Also, I wish for you to mail the package to my office, but please do not put your return address on the envelope, as my employer is a devout Catholic and I think it may cause trouble.
June 22nd, 1968. A young lady that I've been dating has become pregnant. While we enjoy each other's company, neither of us wishes to be forced into marriage. I don't want her to have to go through a pregnancy, even if she gets all proper medical care. I feel a pregnancy is for those who intend having children with their husbands. The girl's about 2.5 months pregnant, so there are no pills that will help. Where can we get an abortion? Although we prefer something local, I'd come north with her in order to prove our sincerity. Please help.
One more.
I'm 18 years old, single and 3 months pregnant by a married man. I need the name of a doctor, for I'm in a desperate situation and I want an abortion. I have $200 in the bank and can get $100 more if I try. Please help me, because if you don't, I'm gonna have to kill myself. I read your article in the Free Press of LA, and you are my last resort. I don't want my family to know, so I'm sending a self-addressed envelope. Please help. If you don't, no one else can.
Okay, whoops. Oh, shit. Shoot. What was that? What's that thing? I got to slide?
You can also just click on this on the
Oh,
arrow.
play. I can just
Yeah.
push on play.
Yeah.
No, but then I got to go. Oh, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah,
Okay,
you can
sorry.
forward. There we go.
Okay, so the letters I just Xeroxed, and then I put them, so as you can tell, there was a lot of flower action going on. I think I was thinking about Matisse, and I was thinking about all those portraits of women with flowers, and how women, I'm thinking about what objectification looked like, and sort of like minimizing women to floral arrangements. So what if the floral arrangements could empower their voices versus disempower them and kind of like, make the female form decorative, but actually empower their words. I didn't know, but it was an experiment. One of the things that Pat had said to me, she said, 'cause she was one of the founders of NOW, the National Organization of Women. She was on the board of NARAL. When it was, she founded ARAL, that became NARAL. Anyway, she said to me, she said, when they started adding those flowers and those pink colors and all those bubbly shapes with those happy slogans like pro-choice, she said the movement became less radical. And I started to think about the relationship to design and color and pattern and things like modernism, and questioning if modernism was, I was being taught, or I was sort of learning that sort of like abstraction and modernism was politically neutral. And this, I was very young when I did this, and this was my kind of like coming out of questioning like the underlying politics of kind of like modernist art making. So I put wrapping paper between each one. Also, I felt like the Xeroxes, these are like poster size, like this big, each one. And I felt like there needed to be a way for these to draw people in, so I put patterned, handmade, or wrapping paper, right? Wrapping paper that decorates packages between each one. I made a book. It's sort of like my Bible of like all the letters with wrapping paper between each letter. I showed this in Texas one time and they ripped it in pieces.
Actually, physically?
Yeah. The guards didn't catch them, so I had to remake it. These are drawings. So I photographed, I was collecting old, like abortion justice or pro-choice pins, you know, buttons. And I put them in the wrapping paper, photographed it, and then these are color pencil drawings. Sort of thinking like I was somehow making abstractions, even though they're really representational. Pattern and decoration, maybe. And so that's, yeah, all colored pencils. So there's a pin hidden in all of them. That one's a little hard to see. That one's 8 feet long. There is a pin in it. The pin is life size. And then this was a photo from Pat's archive. She let me go through some binders she had, and I took a picture of that and then drew it. And it's an old Polaroid. And they used to go to doctors' conventions to try to get doctors to support abortion, you know, and to encourage and, you know, become part of the fight to legalize abortion. And so this was during the Vietnam War, and basically what this woman is saying, she's tabling, she's talking to doctors. And what she's saying is that more women were killed from unsafe abortions, illegal abortions, than men who had died in Vietnam. I also hand drew the letters. This is when I started thinking about if there could be such a thing as feminist expressionism. It was just the beginning. You know, there's a lot of abstract expressionism, a lot of Pollock, a lot of splashy mark making, and I started to think about what a feminist mark making could be, and maybe it was copying the handwriting of women that you love. And I've been doing that my whole career. I did a whole series of Emma Goldman's handwriting. And so this is where that started. These were the letters. Some were typed, some were handwritten. I didn't do all of them. I did like 20 or 30 of them. Pat meticulously scribbled out all the names and addresses because she said to me, you know, some of these people are still alive. That's Pat. So Pat would, I've shown this project probably 30, I would say 30 or 40 times. It's been all over the world, which is so wonderful. But early on when I first started showing it, and Pat was young enough, she would go with me and she would often do lectures, or she would just do an impromptu presentation at the opening, which was amazing because she had quite a sense of humor. But we always usually arranged a talk with her. And she had a women's health care clinic. They also gave support to all genders. But they also did a lot of family planning. But I would invite them I was trying to fundraise for them because my drawings, I often give a portion of the money back from a sale or whatever, but I wasn't really selling much art because I was young. So we were doing like tabling sessions. It was probably very disruptive. You know, they have private openings where the really wealthy people go to, or where the art, you know, and we were doing tabling where the activists, I was thinking that it would be a great way. This was at Yerba Buena Center in San Francisco. I thought this would be a great way to raise money for them, but in fact, more people there asked for their help than money that they raised. And so it made me aware of how needed these services are and how hard it was even then when it was legal for people to access them. I would make, these are their services, if you're at all interested. These were the pages in a catalog that I did for a group show that I was in. I just listed the services, of the healthcare clinic. And that's one of Pat's drawings. She made political posters and she sent them to me once a month for like 20 years. And I don't really know what to do with them yet. Anyway, I think they're amazing. Vieja Gloria, this is my first, this is a video. I swore I'd never make a documentary. I don't know when I did. So I found out that my mom had brain cancer. And I couldn't fathom it. Couldn't fathom her dying. And simultaneously, I opened the newspaper, during this whole process. We had I still read the newspaper, by the way. Anyway, this is before the internet, I think. And I would drive up to my mom. She was living in San Luis Obispo. She's from Ohio, but she had remarried and was living in San Luis Obispo. And I would drive up to visit her, and I would take a shortcut, or I would take a long cut, and I would stop, and I would visit this. There was a guy and some activists trying to save a 400-year-old oak tree, because it was urban sprawl, as you can see, and they were the county supervisors were cutting this 400-year-old oak tree down to widen that road for another housing division that hadn't been approved. And the idea of that tree dying or cutting that tree down was an impossibility. I kind of equated my mom's sickness and that tree. It was like I was going to fight for both of them. And I wasn't making political work then, and I just kept going with my video camera and taking pictures, and I would stand in the distance. And this guy's name is John Quigley, and he was sitting in that tree for over 4 months. And one day, and there were all these amazing local environmentalists, that's what we called them at the time, at the base of the tree taking care of him. And they put a fence around the tree, and people hung signs. And a local radio host turned it into a really big story. And families came, and they put a big light on it. I don't know if I have that. Anyway, in the end, the tree sitter a walkie-talkie was handed to me, and the tree sitter was like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And I thought I was in trouble. He said, "I'm an artist, and I'm documenting this." And he was like, "Great, come on up." I was up in the tree. He was like, I got to interview him. And to this day, he's one of my best friends. And he embraced me. He taught me, and the activists started talking to me about nonviolent civil disobedience. And I started to read about it and make work about it. And it really changed my life. And and I realized that I thought that they wouldn't want me there, but they embraced me, and I felt like they welcomed me, and it was a really amazing thing. And that activist and I have done probably 20 or 30 projects together. And he was at my house last week. He lives in Baja right now, and he stays at my house often, and we're constantly planning projects. We just did a project at the Hammer. So this tree ended up not being cut down and not left alone. It was the size of a spaceship, the space shuttle at the time. They dug it up. They spent millions of dollars digging it up and moving it 4 blocks. And that's part of the video. And we didn't know if the tree would live because it was in a natural underground riverbed. And the tree is like 20, I think its 20th anniversary of a move is coming up, and it's still alive. So good for John Quigley. So that's a good story. So then John was staying at my house, and he and his partner at the time were living in my house, and they had lived for free, and we were all kind of fighting, roommate stuff. And I was like, "Look, you haven't paid a day of rent. You've been here 6 months. You have to teach me how to tree sit. That's what I want in exchange, and I want to make a video about it." And so we did, and here I am learning. We went out in the forest, and he taught me how to do this, and I was actually really good at it. I don't know why, but I was really good with the climbing, and I was making some really heavy emotional work at the time, and I wanted something fun. I wanted something light, and I wanted to learn how to do this. So we made this. I like to make training videos that are both choreography and also train you how to do something. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. The sad thing is, oh yeah, not all the pictures got in. Sad. Anyway, I believe this tree was burned down a couple of years ago in a fire. So it's just like super sad. Climate change is real. Okay, and then, so I have 4 videos about forest defenders. So this is one where after John trained me, this was at a show in Germany called Cultivating the Courage to Sin. And tree sitters, when they sit in a tree, they usually take like a tree sitting platform, which is usually like a piece of a door. It's nothing fancy. You got to carry it out there. But there are some tree sitters who are out there for years, so they make really labor-intensive tree sitting platforms. And one of the young men who was working with John on the first tree sit in Valencia, they called the tree Vieja Gloria, Old Glory, you know, because it was the same age as our country and the flag. He often needed work. He was sitting in a tree in the Strawberry Rock area of Northern California, up in the Redwoods. He would come down, take a break, need money. So he'd come to my studio and we'd make these tree sitting platforms, sort of like Pimp My Ride tree sitting platforms, like really elaborate, because he tied all these like really beautiful knots. And all the wood we would recycle. We didn't buy anything. We went and picked it up on Craigslist or whatever. But I wanted to show off his craft at knotting. And I said to him, I said, "What's your dream tree sitting platform, Travis?" And he was like, "A pirate ship." And I got really pissed off. I was like, oh, he's such a boy. You know, like I would never have thought of a pirate ship. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a radical feminist tree sitting platform pirate ship. So that's what this is. I got the idea from Travis. So what happened was, this is a drawing, this is my mugshot. Travis, Julia J. Posen, who's also an activist, she's working with Amazon Watch right now, and John, the 4 of us went up in a forest. It was what do I want to say, urban wilderness, like an urban wild area. And it was 350 old growth oak and sycamore. And they wanted to cut down the forest so that they had somewhere, you know, all of our like cement rivers and everything, they need to dredge those. And this area was kind of bowl-shaped, so they thought, we'll cut down the natural forest and fill it with soot. So, I mean, horrible. So he called me. It had been like 6 months since we had made the other video. I was feeling kind of out of shape. Kind of like I couldn't do anything physically. And he's like, we're going in tonight. You gotta be ready, 3 a.m., we're breaking in and we're gonna do this tree sit. And so we each took a tree in this huge forest. I mean, there were two people in each tree. I was scared to death, but I was like too determined not to do it. Anyway, so we did get arrested. This is my mug shot. I drew it, and this is how I pay for my legal defense. It was 2.5 years of legal defense. This was how it looked when we went in the middle of the night. It was the most magical place I'd ever seen. No one had touched the soil. Oh, that's the police that's the sheriffs underneath me when they figured out we were in the tree. So they didn't cut these trees down and they didn't take us out. They cut the entire forest around us. I never imagined that would happen. And the way they got rid of the trees was they took the bulldozers and they smashed them down as if they were breaking toothpicks, only the size of, 200 and 300-year-old trees. And it was the worst noise I had ever heard. And I didn't expect it. I expected to be taken out. I had never seen a tree sit where they left the activists in. And it was scary because all the trees were connected in the canopies. So when they took the bulldozer and knocked the trees next to us, our tree was like this. And by the end of the day, there were 2 trees left, 2 activists in each of those trees. And it was the most shocking thing because the entire ecosystem of the forest came into our trees. There were bats, there were birds, there were rats, there were insects, and it was like the saddest experience, like eco grief, you know? And it was so loud because then they took the wood and they put it in wood chippers. Like, why not at least save the wood? We're all artists, you know, let's do something with an entire forest. They put it in wood chippers. So the cops videotaped me, so I actually got their footage in the court hearing and used it in a video. I got it released as evidence. So that's like, you know, so I had a camera in the tree and I shot the whole thing. I'm also the comic relief because I'm scared to death. At the time I was like, people thought of themselves as activists and then not activists. You know, there wasn't this thing of going in the street. So I was trying to, you know, John was an activist. I was the like normal person, but I was scared to death. I was afraid of going to jail. I mean, I got arrested. I went to jail. I was petrified. I didn't know if I should just listen to the sheriffs and get down. I'm asking stupid questions. But I stayed. And then at night, here's the search and rescue guys coming up. We're tied to the tree, and they come up and they cut us out, and they took us down and they took us to jail. And that's what the land looked like when I got out of jail. That exact same photo you saw before, this is what it looked like after. They clear-cut the entire area. That's Travis crying. That's from the cop footage. I couldn't see Travis, but the sheriff's camera that I got as evidence that they had to turn over. Yeah, there it is. Oh, that got moved. That's from the last video. Anyway, and then I'll just show you a little bit of, I'll just skip this. This is, well, anyway, so one of the things, so that other project, the last one, a lot of it was kind of making fun of the kind of like history of, I mean, you know, with everything there comes problems. There's good things and there's bad things. And a lot of the activists who do this kind of like very physical forest defense or climb bridges, drop signs, you know, a lot of the Greenpeace actions, a lot of the like Earth First actions back in the day, there were aspects of it that were super macho. So I was kind of making fun of that. But then, lo and behold, during COVID, I went up to Northern California, and there's an amazing group called the Redwood Forest Defenders, and I got to interview them, and I made a piece about them, and they're all like femme, queer, and their politics is so of today. And, you know, they're really interested in indigenous rights and the way that indigenous peoples took care of the land. And I don't know, I just found them to be really amazing. So it was finally this totally alternative attitude within this really important type of activism. So I know they had their names were Cupcake and Lupine. So, you know, when it's really hard to get permission, you know, to show the video when you've got AKA Cupcake and Lupine signing the paperwork. So, you know, anyway, oops, I'm going the wrong way again. I'll just show a little tiny bit of it, is it going to play? So, drone footage, because I feel like the landscape is the character.
That remove all of trees from the site. When you clear cut, literally everything is cut down, all the lots are hauled away, and then the area regrows all of the same age. And so the result is a tree plantation.
Basically what they do is they cut any tree that they deem to be profitable or in the way, and there are regulations in place that will salvage a couple of trees. Like in this area behind me that I'm looking out at, there's like 2 or 3 redwoods that got marked as wildlife. That's what our conservation laws get us is, 100 acres of clear cut, 2 trees left behind.
I love talking about greenwashing. It's so rampant and it's becoming more so, and I think it's really sinister and dangerous marketing strategy. Greenwashing is the phenomenon where corporations lie to us and tell us that things are sustainable when they're really not. And it's a marketing tool they use to increase their profits. So Green Diamond is a subsidiary of Simpson Industries. A lot of the forests that they're cutting now, they've already cut before. But now they have a new name, they've rebranded, and Green Diamond, the name they adopted several years ago, is kind of their effort to appear to be a sustainable company or to be looking out for the land. So Green Diamond holds third-party certification with the Forest Stewardship Council. And the Forest Stewardship Council started as an entity in conversation with environmental nonprofits that was supposed to hold the timber industry accountable, but what it's turned into is actually just a marketing tool for the timber industry. And if you look at your paper products in your home or your workplace, you'll see the FSC stamp on a lot of it. The more I learn about FSC, the more I think that FSC is allowing the timber industry to lie to consumers about the real impacts of.
So I'm not going to show all that because that was specifically edited for greenwashing. But what I will say is that forest that you saw clear cut, that was used to make environmentally friendly toilet paper. So there's all this greenwashing going on now. It used to be that the timber industry was like, we own the land, we cut the trees, we have a right to. And they got really savvy and they're like, we're environmentalists, we're saving the forest, we're saving 2 trees and 100 acres, and and they're making environmentally friendly products. So that was really shocking for me to see. This is a piece called No Olvidato, Not Forgotten. Basically, I made a project with 2 different, I don't have both the other video here, but this is a drawing. And I found out that there is an organization in San Diego who was, the founder's name was Enrique Morones. And I found out that he was trying to collect the names of, make a list of everyone who had died crossing the border. And these names go up to the year 2000. And he was getting them from the U.S. and Mexican governments. And he also, his organization is called Border Angels. He's no longer with the organization. He was much older than me. So I think he's just retired. But Enrique was also, the Border Angels provided food and water at the border for people who were crossing the border from Mexico to the United States. And I wanted to make a piece that kind of acknowledged and honored those names. This is a drawing. And I also had a poster in front of it that people could have. That, the poster's not in there, but that, I don't know if, let me see, maybe it is. These were drawings from May Day marches. I did an event. These were some of my students from Otis. And I asked them if they wanted to do, I was doing events every Saturday at the gallery, because I was thinking about galleries, doing more with galleries, maybe instead of just hating the White Cube, maybe the Cube could become more of a community center, and events could happen at it. So Enrique spoke, Ernesto, Irena, Felicia Montez, who had been one of our students, and the other woman actually did not. But anyway, we'd have events like this. So I guess what I wanted to say about this piece was that this was a piece where I always try to think about the things that art can do. And I think that art can bear witness, and I think that art can fundraise, because it's a really, it's until we really get past this, it is, if you have any success, you have to deal with capitalism. And this particular piece it's really big. And I really wanted in my heart to leave it as one piece, but I also wanted to help raise money for the organization. And so I was able to sell, I don't know, maybe a third or a half of it. The pieces that were just in the Hammer exhibition are not sold. There's a lot of it that is not sold, but every piece that's sold, I gave the entire profits to, I couldn't make any money off this. I didn't want to. I gave it all to Border Angels. And it was kind of funny because they were like, would you be on the board, but you have to spend $5,000 a year? I was like, this is the only year I'm going to make money. Like, I can't do this project every year. But anyway, so that becomes like a problem as an artist, like something that's really one piece. Do you break it up? And I always thought if I ever had like a retrospective or a survey show, I'd be able to bring it back together. But that just happened, and we couldn't afford to bring it back together. So I may never see it again in my lifetime, and that makes me sad. But at the same time, I think that it served its purpose really well in a lot of ways. And if more of these sell, all the money will go to Border Angels or an organization like it, if they're not around. That poster was a free poster, and it was, I might be able to read to you what it said. Holtville, let's see if I can find that. Didn't mark it. Basically, it's, here. It's in both English and Spanish, but it's the Holtville, California, a small town located near the United States-Mexican border, is home to Terrace Park Cemetery. At the back of this cemetery is a dirt field of anonymous grave sites where unidentified people are buried. Among those put to rest are the bodies of people who died crossing the border. And so this is like, Enrique was like marking the graves and taking people there to know what happened. And he was trying to get involved in like testing, to try to do DNA testing. It's something they're still really interested in. Anyway. That's Enrique. That's Felicia. So I was in the Frieze Art Fair, and I was like, I don't know, kind of excited. It's hard to get into those things. And 3 galleries had my work, and I had made all this like giant cardboards based on IWW images that were, from the industrial workers of the world. And the irony was that I found out, let me get to it. Oh, not here. That the Teamsters, I found out 24 hours before the fair was to open that the Teamsters were protesting the fair for labor rights. And I had made work about workers' labor. Like the irony, the horror, the embarrassment. So I didn't know what to do. The Occupy movement had just happened. I tried to call Arts and Labor in New York. Couldn't get a hold of them. Finally got a hold of I called the Teamsters office, and I finally got a hold of this woman, Bernadette Kelly, and she was running the campaign at the Frieze Art Fair. And I was like, I'm so embarrassed. What do I do? Should I pull my work out? And it was complicated because my galleries are not like, they've grown, but they're still not like Hauser and Wirth level. They're like, Suzanne Villemetter was the one who was taking these giant cardboards, and she, she was struggling economically at the time, and it cost so much to go to these fairs. It cost like $75,000, $100,000 for a gallery to go to an art fair. And more, maybe, I don't even know. But, and Bernadette was like, whoa, you don't have to pull your art out. The Teamsters, we support people making money. We don't want to risk you, not making money. She goes, we've never had an artist on the inside. So this is awesome. So together we wrote a letter, and I don't know if you can see those people, we pinned the letter up, and it was just the rights that the things that they were demanding, that the Teamsters and Arts and Labor, because they were doing this together as a protest, were demanding for the workers. And within 2 hours of these going up, the head of the art fair called me, and I had him and Bernadette Kelly, the head of the Teamsters, on the phone together on a conference call. And I felt really bad because I realized I was not a very good negotiator as an artist. And I thought, I was really hopeful that something would come from it, but there was no common ground. But I was really dejected, but it got a lot of attention, and people read the text, and there was tons of media about it, and that made me feel really good. But so, I was there. That was kind of like a frontline piece during the art fair, and I thought, well, nothing may happen. But then Bernadette was there. I'm part of a whole. She took over after that meeting, and within a year, the New York Frieze Art Fair was unionized. They did the work. I started an action. They came in. It was a group process. So I'm very proud of that. And and these are some of the members. And then we took some of the imagery from the IWW and made current flyers that I put at all of my galleries. That was the letter. We made stickers. There were articles. I think getting media is like another thing we can do as artists is access the media. And then another gallery, I had workers' rights posters, so I switched some of them out and FedEx them. I made them in 24 hours and FedEx them and had them post some of them that say Frieze Art Fair, unfair to New York workers, and we stuck it in the middle of the work. Oh, some of these slides got mixed up. That's okay. So let's see, this is Toccata Ironized. I went to Standing Rock thinking, I'll take my camera, I'll make an artwork. Do you all know what Standing Rock was? Yeah. So it was there was a pipeline being dug under the river next to the reservation. And as we know, all pipelines leak. And so the Standing Rock tribe, a protest started on their land, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And when I was there, it was the middle of winter, it was freezing, there was a blizzard, and there were 20,000 people. And they were all living in this amazing encampment, and people were getting fed, people were getting housed. Anyway, it was such an amazing organizing structure and learning experience for me that I didn't make anything, and I just experienced it. And I don't know, I cleaned hotel rooms because we got stuck in the casino. There's a casino because there was such a bad blizzard. We had to move everyone from the camp into the casino, and there was no one to clean rooms, and there were elders sleeping on the floors, so I cleaned Standing Rock. And I don't know, it was one of the life-changing experiences for me. But while I was there, I met so many people, and people just, friends, they become friends. And over time, I was really in love with this young activist, Toccata Ironized. She was the youth spokesperson for Standing Rock, and I was blown away by her voice and her activism. And I became friends with some of the video crew. There was a crew of youth, young people, and teachers who were flying drones over the area where they were drilling to make sure when they were told by the government not to drill that they weren't drilling. And so drones were used as an activist tool, and then one of those activists who was flying the drones at Standing Rock was friends with Tokata, introduced me, and it was over maybe 3 or 4 years that Tokata and Tina Puglisi was the activist that I met there who shot the drones, and a group of us, 4 of us, 5 of us, went to, I'll show you these later. Went to South Dakota, and Tokata, we all went together in a truck, and Tokata chose her 5 most sacred places, and I interviewed her in those, and we shot her, and we had a really good time for 4 days doing this. And anyway, I'll show you a little bit. I made these neons. I'm kind of at this point where I feel like projecting in the black box, white cube thing is really boring. And I've been making a ton of neon. And so I made these neon sycamore leaf pieces to go inside it so that it's more, I don't know, of an interesting environment, that it's more kind of like seductive, and I had these eco-feminist quotes in them by famous eco-feminists. But I'll show you some of Tokata's video here. I think that's it.
My name is Tokata Iron Eyes. I'm 16 years old. I'm from the Standing Rock Reservation in North Dakota. I currently live on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. I consider the work that I do to protect the land a part of who I am as an Indigenous person, and I would say a part of my spirituality. It's just that I was taught to think of the earth as a relative, and so inherently it brings upon questioning of the ways in which we treat the earth now, which I guess could be considered activism in the world that we live in. I think of myself as a feminist simply by being an Indigenous woman in the world that I live in today, because I live in a time where my aunties and sisters go missing and are murdered around me. And so as a person who loves those people, it would not make sense for me not to be inherently protective of them and want them to be safe and want myself to be safe. And I think that that's how I'm a feminist. I've also strived to make sure that the earth is safe, and I recognize her as a woman or as a feminine power, and so if I want to be able to say that I'm a feminist, I'm also inherently fighting for her rights. Within regards to my relationship with the earth and with nature, they always made sure that I was aware that everything had a life force within it. Everything has its own autonomy and its own free will. And so to be able to humanize the things around me as my relatives rather than something that I could own or take advantage of was something that was really monumental in becoming the activist that I am now. Because a lot of my work involves bringing awareness to that relationship, the relationship that human beings have with the earth. This relationship that is supposed to be nourishing and beautiful and loving. And right now, it's a relationship that's very abusive, and it's something that needs to be fixed. As an Indigenous person who has been living in a way that capitalism has been imposed upon my community for hundreds of years, I see that it's still not working, and it's still not providing a way for me to learn about who I am as an Indigenous person and be able to really physically enact those teachings and that wisdom. Because the two systems of being, this way of community versus this way of greed and selfishness, can't connect to each other in a way that isn't harmful or violent. This conflict between this world that we want to live in as Indigenous people and the one that we've been trying to grow in economically for hundreds of years, they don't mesh together. And so to be able to build a new system that encompasses the modern parts of this world and these ancient, important teachings of our ancestors. That's the kind of system that we need as humanity to be able to begin to really prosper as people, with emotions, with feelings, and with dreams.
Okay, so I'm gonna just show you some of the stills. Here's some neons.
So Andrea,
I'm done.
5 more. You can do 5 more, and then we'll do questions.
Okay, perfect. I'm showing you my last little video. I did this about a couple weeks ago. Sorry about the sound. The museum made this. You can all tell me what I should tell them. They said, "What do you think of this?" Thanks. Okay. That last little bit, there's an activist in Rome. She's also a theorist, and she's also has studied a ton of martial arts. And so she wrote a book called Another Kind of Strength. And strength in Italian also means gender. So it's like super interesting what she's doing. And she hates to call it self-defense because it's a different kind of strength. But she did a training class and is teaching people how to protect themselves, and how it's a lot of spinning, falling. It's like opposite of like walking forward and punching, it's like using your own body. And I asked her and her friends the second day after the training if I could I could videotape them in 18th century or 1800s ball gowns doing these moves, because this museum, GAM, is the 18th century museum of Milan, and it's all paintings by men. There's only one painting in the whole museum by a woman. And they just, elected this fascist woman president. So the whole show is a kind of like inserting, like trying to put a feminist or female empowered or a gender fluid empowerment into this space after years of, it's like freedom of movement. It made me think about all of the women for generations who had to wear these dresses and dance in this ballroom and be controlled, have their bodies controlled in so many different ways, and clothing especially. So, and the fans, they use the fans in the lessons because the fans become weapons. They're like, it's So it's like, I don't know, it was really fun to work with her, and we want to do more projects together. Anyway, questions? There you go. Thanks for putting up with me. It's so weird to get this old because I haven't showed you like a 16th of what I've done. It's really hard to decide what to show. So, okay. Questions, anybody? Yes. Thanks now.
Do you think you'll experience the fall of patriarchy in your lifetime?
I
And
think
what do you expect?
I'm a big believer in like non-binary. I believe, like language, gender fluidity. I actually think when you get rid of like these divisions like men and women, and I actually think that's the hope for overcoming patriarchy, honestly. But I think it's going to take a long time. I don't know. I mean, I never thought I'd see same-sex marriage in my lifetime, and we did. So I'm like super hopeful. Yep.
And it's like your work spans like a completely breadth of medium. So I was wondering, when you look back on your previous works, or even like the retrospectives, like going through everything, is there ever a time where you look back on a work and wish it was in a different medium, or you are?
I mean, I think if I did, I'd just make it. I think that the video and the drawing are the source. There's tons of stuff I haven't showed you too, but I really love the ribbons. Are like, it's like gift culture. Like I just love to experiment with ideas. Like I love to silk screen. I love the silkscreen stations throughout the Occupy encampments. And when I first did that, I was in a show at the Jewish Museum about gifting. Anyway, I don't think, there's lots of things I'm not showing you too. So I think I experiment with so many mediums. I'm not sure. I just keep adding them to my repertoire. It's like, a tool bag. And sometimes a subject matter comes with a set of colors, a set of materials, a site, a movement, whatever it might be. And those things then become like source material in a way, right? Like dance, like this, like the dresses. I would never have worked with dresses like that before, And a lot of times just researching the subject and the site. So when I did this project, I asked them to kind of I felt like this should be a really simple, feminist show in a way. I wanted to know, because Italy is very much not feminist. and so I asked them to kind of the curators and the museum people to research the feminist groups in Milan. And so I went for a site visit and just met. I didn't really spend much time in the site. I met with all these different activist groups. And that's what I always do. I always ask an institution to create, because it's really not just about me. It's about can these groups work with these institutions once I'm gone? Can you create a long-lasting relationship? Because I'm in and out after 3 months. My show's up and then I don't have any power to make them do anything. But if I can create alliances with these institutions, it can change the way their kind of educational programming works. And so that's another medium there. I'm getting into all these mediums, so I think about that too. But I just find it in the source material a lot of times. And then I depend upon things like drawing, neon, video that I do over and over again. But yeah, I don't know. If I do, I'll just probably make it again. I'll just make it. Yeah. Who else? Somebody else had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, have you spoken to any of the remaining members of the Army of Three since the Roe v. Wade?
Pat just died. She was the last living member. And I was actually, I couldn't get a hold of her for a few years because she was so sick. And, but what I'm really, I think is really rewarding is that the New York Times published her obituary and NPR did a story on her. And so I feel like her legacy is coming back. It's really hard for me. I really loved her. So I feel like that's really important. So, yeah. And the work can kind of function that way. NPR called and interviewed me because I had all of these archives. You know, the archives are other places, but the visualness of art. You know, we're artists, and we get things. We make visual things, and when people Google, you know, her name would come up with mine, so they would reach out to me. Right now, I'm negotiating with the New York Times because they want to use these letters to make a new piece, and I'm trying to decide if it's, you know. So I have a meeting on Thursday. You know, but it would be animated. Like, I'm not sure. I need them to tell me more. Like, and I have a responsibility because Pat's not here anymore, how this material is used. So, yeah. Pat would be outraged. She would be pissed, and her and Lana would be on the streets, like screaming, yelling, doing actions. That's what they would be doing. Yeah.
You're touching on all these political topics. I'm just wondering, are there any controversial ones that you wouldn't touch on, hypothetically speaking, Palestine? Like, are there any topics that you're not willing to touch or haven't talked to?
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's really weird because, like, you know how I really work in like friendship groups, and so there might be a subject I think I would never touch, and then I meet somebody, an activist. Like, a lot of times it's not just me reaching out to activists. Sometimes activists now reach out to me, or like the other night I got the fortune of having dinner with Chase Strangio, who is a lawyer who's fighting all the he works for the ACLU, and he's fighting all the hate cases against, like, you know, the trans youth and stuff all across the United States. He argues them at the Supreme Court. And so, you know, sometimes I just get to meet somebody. Like, I've been talking to Chase, but I don't know. I never know. Like, I might say that. I make these lists of cardinal rules never to break. You know, like, one is I worked with kids once. I'm never working with children again. Leave it up to the experts. I'm terrible at it. I think, and it changes with times too. I think things I might think I would have never done 20 years ago, I might do now, or vice versa. Like, I think politics are so fluid and changing that I never say never. Also, I always say never work with the city or the government, you know, but I'm doing a public artwork. So, you know, yeah. But I can't really, I try not to say that because it fluctuates and the world changes so much. Any other questions? Yeah?
Another one. So I was wondering, you're dealing with a lot of really heavy subjects, obviously, a lot of very politically charged things, and a lot of things that have, like, psychological weight, like a lot of grief behind them. I think of Standing Rock, and I think of watching that forest being taken down after you'd been sitting up in the trees with those other activists. How do you, like, emotionally deal with the grief that is a part of the things that you work with in your practice?
I mean, I do cry a lot. But I mean, actually, it's activists. The reason I document activists is because activists give me hope. They're out there doing things. They're trying to make the world a better place. And what better subject to make my work about than to, like, document them. Also, a lot of activists are so busy, they don't document their own stuff. Also, they tend to, like, I was just in Ohio. I'm from Ohio. I'm shooting a piece about the destruction of the Great Lakes through corporate farming, and there's so much animal manure being dumped into the Great Lakes that it's causing algae bloom that's killing the lakes. And so I met with farmers. Like, I didn't have any idea. I was working with this activist, Tish O'Dell, who has this organization in Cleveland, and they're writing rights of nature bills. They're trying to change the laws. The organization is CellDef, and they give free legal defense for environmental issues to local communities. So they're literally trying to write laws that give nature almost like a kind of personhood, that gives nature the right to exist. And they're fighting them all over the world, actually. And they're writing, these. So I was with Tish, and you know, it's so depressing. I saw a 4 million chicken egg farm. 4 million chickens, and I never saw one chicken. It was so tall. And they were all locked up. I never could, it was just metal buildings. And there was a little grass in between these huge buildings. I only know this because I flew drones over them. And because they have that grass and no chicken ever goes outside, they can go up free range. And then I got a call a week ago. I'd been there a month and a half ago shooting this documentary. And Tish was like, you know, they killed all 4 million chickens. They dug a hole and they buried them in it because they got the aviary flu inside the nest, the chicken farm. So anyway, it's like, it's really depressing, but the subjects are depressing, but that there are people out there fighting, and I just want to record their work. I just be of any help I can as an artist. I am an artist, I make things. If my making things or my exhibitions can help them, and we have an agreement that we're gonna trade these things and that I'm gonna do this, great. If it doesn't work out, I'm not gonna force myself on anybody. But I think it's the love. There's like, I don't know, I just think it's their commitment that's so impactful. And if I'm out, like whether I'm at a march or I'm interviewing an activist or I'm seeing what they're fighting, and it gives me hope. So it's like grief and hope. I think about that term all the time, grief and hope. And I'm just trying to document within the grief the things that are hopeful to me. All right, any other questions? Are we good? Thank you all for putting up with me.